Shawn, when we talk about family entrepreneurial mindset and, you know, like you said, you're dealing with a lot of family businesses yourself. What does that mean to you? Where do you see, you know, how, you know, I mean, I can immediately see how MTM, you know, 360 would do some of those things, but do you want to spark on that a little bit or noodle on that with us?
Well, in our Governance 360 project, one of the deliverables is the family bank that we use to incentivize entrepreneurship that is consistent with the family core values, the shared core values, and the shared vision that we've already established in the previous projects. So we want to incentivize that entrepreneurship from the next generation, whether it's, you know, starting a lemonade stand and you need to write it on a piece of paper and crayon. Like, just get in the habit of presenting your ideas, why it's important, the impact you want to make, and getting them to think that way at a very young age. You know, what are your supplies? What are your costs? What are your, you know, just getting them to think as business folks as soon as we can. So one, we incentivize it through our governance project and governance entities, which I think is always very helpful. Then obviously it can continue to grow and get more serious as the next generation gets older. But we try to establish that from the very beginning. At a minimum, establishing a family bank gives a mechanism and again incentivizes the next generation to think in an entrepreneurial way, excuse me. So that's the way that we approach it. We very much approach governance from being a proactive versus reactive stance. Now, we can get a lot more positive results if we're proactive about governance and being reactive to a problem or an issue that we're concerned with. Being reactive, we still have success obviously doing that, but it's our preference to try to attack these issues from a proactive perspective, so we can mitigate any potential strife and also encourage the behaviors that we want to encourage. And that's a big part of integrating our values with our valuables. And we do a lot of that in our Legacy 360 project. And that's a big part of, okay, we want to incentivize specific, purposeful, positive behaviors from the next generation that are consistent with our core values, our shared vision, our family legacy mission statement that we help families create and write, so that we can then get those behaviors from the next generation. So we integrate values with valuables, we integrate values with the actual planning, and we certainly have a specific governance instrument dedicated to entrepreneurship and encouraging that entrepreneurship and getting the next generation to think like entrepreneurs from a very young age. So that's our approach and how we attack it.
Love it. Let me just, you used the word family bank, and I think some of the people listening will hear that and say, what in the world is that? So spend a second to talk about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it's just a trust, and the trust has certain parameters as to when it will loan money to one of the family members for a business idea. It sets forth criteria that the potential business needs to meet. Fun things, not fun things, but impactful things like, okay, you're gonna donate 25% of your profits to fill in the blank charity, and things that are required from the family bank that again are consistent with the core values, the family vision, and so forth. So we integrate those into the documents. We put some assets inside that trust that are available to be loaned for entrepreneurial ideas that again are consistent with the terms set forth in the document. So it's just a trust that has specific language in it to encourage entrepreneurship, but responsible, purposeful entrepreneurship. And again, we talk a lot of that about, we do a lot of work with the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals and integrating that into their finances. We don't manage the money. We don't do any of the financial stuff, no product or investments or anything along those lines. We just do the MTM 360 piece. But we spark that conversation so that their team of professional advisors can integrate that into their existing planning as well as the entrepreneurship piece as well.
Great. I remember the first time I heard the term family bank, and didn't make any sense. So I appreciate you kind of describing that for everybody here.
The first time one of the family members that I was working with in a family in Chicago heard of the idea, one of the cousins was complaining to his other cousin that, gee, we need a hockey rink in this town. It'd be so much easier because, you know, if you're a young kid on a hockey team, the ice time is usually at a rink about 3 towns away at 5 o'clock in the morning. And he was like, we need a rink in this town. It'd be so much easier. And he said, his cousin said, that's a good investment idea. You ought to bring it to the family bank. And he said, what's a family bank? He says, well, Grandpa set up this trust, and Uncle Joe, he's the chairman of it, and they're looking for investment. That's an investment. You got to bring them. So this little kid goes see Uncle Joe, says, Uncle Joe, I think we ought to invest in this hockey rink. Uncle Joe says, great idea. Where's your business plan? And this 14-year-old kid says, what's a business plan?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And he paired that kid up with an uncle and aunt to write a business plan. So they said they were teaching two generations at the same time how to write a business plan. But he came back and he came to the family meeting to give his presentation, a financial rite of passage for a 14-year-old in that family. How many families have a financial rite of passage for a 14-year-old? Right. And he decided not to invest in the hockey rink because he heard other people talking about rate of return. He's like, rate of return, what's that? I just want a hockey rink. And but it was a great lesson. What's interesting is that he was learning by doing, and that's really the crux of when I say entrepreneurship. What's an entrepreneurial mentality? Entrepreneurs are people that tend to do to learn. Mid-level managers that seem to never be able to rise and get out of their way are people that feel like they need to learn to be able to do. So they get degrees and all, and they learn in a shaped environment. It's very hard to be entrepreneurial if you've learned in a shaped environment, because entrepreneurship is very unshaped. So how do you create an environment of doing to learn? And these are all examples of when I say, creating an entrepreneurial mentality, how do you do that? Most entrepreneurship programs in the country are not actually teaching entrepreneurship. They're teaching mid-level management of small companies. Once you have an idea, how do you finance it? And then how do you run it? And how do you manage resources? And how do you hire people and fire people? And then how do you have an exit strategy? That's small business management. That's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, think of a circle with 4 parts to it with a middle donut. And the 4 parts are the practice of play. Do I have a free and imaginative mind? You can teach these things. The practice of empathy. If I get to the airport and there's a 2-hour line for security, do I just get in it and play Sudoku, or do I think that's a problem? And actually, and what do I see the problems in society? How do I look for those and see them and be more open-minded about that? Thirdly, the practice of creating a solution to this problem that hopefully you've seen that, in your free and imaginative mind. And then finally, the fourth corner of that is the practice of experimentation. Can I try and fail? Is that okay? And learn and try and fail and learn and try and fail. Oh, and succeed. And then the middle of the donut is the practice of reflection. So we're constantly looking at those things. If a family has that mentality about everything that they're embarking upon, they are working and thinking very differently, communicating differently, but they're in an environment of trust and relationship around group decision making. And that to me is, again, you started with majoring the majors, we're ending with major. That's majoring the majors and getting to the right place, hopefully effectively.